on May 3rd, 1999, one of the most strongest and destructive tornadoes ever recorded just began outside of Amber, Oklahoma. The tornado was initially weak, mostly causing pockets of trees to lay down. The tornado did begin to intensify very quickly. As the tornado approached Bridge Creek, winds exceeded 200 miles an hour, meaning it was already at either F3 to F5 intensity. This violent tornado was quickly intensifying more than any tornado ever recorded, and almost instantly, homes were swept clean off their foundations, leaving nothing but a bare slab. Trees were so badly debarked and denuded that practically nothing existed. Large pockets of trees were brought down, and cars were mangled so badly that they were labeled unrecognizable, later had to be scrapped. A large percentage of the homes in Bridge Creek and more that day sustained either major or weak damage as the tornado was entering town. This extremely violent tornado was approaching the city of Bridge Creek, Oklahoma, and in an instant, every single home was scrubbed off the earth, including many multiple well-built and properly anchored homes. The tornado began to dig deeply into the earth in a process called ground scouring. In some locations, it got as deep as even 2 feet. This violent F5 tornado was beginning to track towards Oklahoma City, and the National Weather Service meteorologists declared this was a dangerous situation. And so, at approximately 6:15 p.m., the National Weather Service in Norman, Oklahoma, issued the very first tornado emergency, stating a large and damaging tornado was heading in towards southwest Oklahoma City, and anyone in that area should take immediate tornado precautions. This is a dangerous situation. And the warning lasted until 7:34 p.m. Central Daylight Time. The tornado was causing some of the most worst damage imaginable, and many photos or videos were taken of this tornado because of its area and where it was. As the tornado was heading towards more, it began to dig into the earth, and as it came towards Bridge Creek, it finally entered town. Every single well-constructed home was picked clean off its foundation, leaving nothing but literal powder and a bare slab. This was an extremely violent and dangerous tornado. Death reports and injury reports were trickling in from all over town, and eventually, this extremely strong tornado was beginning to enter F5 stages, and the tornado is now likely at its largest point, 1 mile wide. This extremely violent and dangerous tornado caused some of the most worst damage possible. Trees practically stopped existing. Homes catastrophically failed within the 300-mile-an-hour winds. Shortly after 7:16 p.m., a Doppler on wheels truck was on highway or Interstate 35, I believe it was I-35, and scanned the tornado to find an incredible measure of averaging wind speeds 200 miles an hour. Then, another scan was done. Winds exceeded 330 miles an hour, meaning that this tornado had some of the strongest winds in American history. This extremely powerful tornado was now in Bridge Creek. Every structure I touched was ripped off its foundations, and in some cases didn't even exist. This monster, mile-wide tornado was barreling into the city, and at this point, nothing could be done about it. And even though this was a dire situation, it was not done yet. The tornado was finally entering more. It was coming closer, closer every minute. And this extremely dangerous tornado would unfortunately do something very infamous. A tornado was going over an interstate, and there's this large and very long stretching overpass. The tornado had its highest winds possible, and the Crago family was at home, not even expecting it. And so, the tornado was going over the interstate, and a mom and her son Levi would suffer a terrible fate. And the mom was completely sucked out of the entire bridge, and she would sustain gruesome injuries and later die. Her son Levi was heard shouting, "Where's my mom? Where's my mom?" Unfortunately, she would pass away. She was described as a loving mother with 2 children, and very caring towards her family. The tornado is only getting stronger. The Crago family was at home, and Catherine Crago was sitting at home, and the tornado impacted her home. Her baby was sucked out of her arms and thrown into a large puddle of mud. The baby would not sustain any injuries and would be left untouched. Catherine, however, was seriously injured. Then, this new tornado was getting interesting. The tornado spawned a weak primary satellite tornado. It was mainly orbiting around the circulation, and it only lasted for about 1 mile before dissipating. This large wedge tornado would shrink in size but not intensity. The violent motion, rotation, in this tornado was noticed, and this extremely strong tornado was rotating so fastly. The winds were getting high very, very fastly, and large, dangerous tornado, they seemed to be roping out. And every structure that was sustaining F5 to F4 damage was luckily saved, but this tornado was about to hit a heavily populated neighborhood and more, and thankfully the path had just meandered to the north, and eventually this is where it do something very terrifying. This giant tornado was likely above a mile wide, but the reports and evidence show that it was only a mile wide. That's largest, although public data claims to be 1,500 yards or 1,496 yards. The tornado was simply seeming to rope out. However, that was a grave mistake for people to think. This tornado was actually getting stronger. It was getting smaller, but the core was so violent. It dug a nearly half-mile-long trench into the ground, almost 2 feet deep. And at this point, there was practically no mercy left. No more near misses. This tornado is not playing games. The large, violent wedge was intensifying so much that any home touched by even the outside or south side of the tornado vanished. Nothing was left. In some cases, the homes simply disappeared into the darkness. Many people were getting worried about the tornado, and it was seen that at this point, 23 people had already lost their lives, but that number would only get higher as the tornado is entering in more. Sadly, in this area, though, 16 people lose their lives trying to shelter in their homes. Death toll is now 39, but was getting lower. As the tornado was halfway through more, 2 more people died, meaning the death toll was finally taking a rest at 41. Well over 600 people were injured. The tornado stopped fatally and seriously injuring people. And at this point, the tornado seemed to be fading, but it wasn't. Even though it looked like it was fading away multiple times, it was only getting stronger. The tornado inflicted F5 damage to most of the structures more, possibly high-end F4. In some cases, the damage was so extreme that homes just couldn't be rebuilt and were left with just pure foundations. And since the tornado was so violent and so destructive, there was nothing that could have been possibly done about it. And the National Weather Service was doing a good job by issuing warnings. They had to issue another tornado emergency for most of southwest and southeast Oklahoma City. And the damage, even though it's getting more sporadic, it wasn't done, because damage was getting so shaky but so strong that homes looked like they were not even existent anymore. And the tornado was getting the strongest it ever had. Homes vanished, lives taken, people devastated. At sometime around 7 p.m., 7:20 p.m. to be exact, the tornado would start to devastate all of Oklahoma City. The tornado was now in Oklahoma City. Every home it touched, gone within a snap of a finger. And even though it was getting ready to rope out, it still had one last punch to back. The tornado was getting stronger, to the point where homes were unrecognizable, and a man's car was ripped out of the garage that it was in, and it was mangled and crumpled up to nothing but a simple engine. His car was found as just a simple ball of steel, nothing more. At this point, the tornado wasn't the strongest it was, but the last time it inflicted F5 damage was entering southwest Oklahoma City. That would be the last time it would cause F5 damage. The tornado was coming to an end, but it still had a little bit left. The tornado was then beginning to rip trees straight out of the ground, leaving nothing but pure just cracks from the trees' roots. The pure strength of this tornado was unmatchable to any other tornado ever recorded. And it seemed as if the tornado had stopped, but that's where people think wrong. The tornado was nowhere near done, but it was beginning to actually come to an end after an incredibly long time. But at this point, the tornado was becoming more erratic. The path began to become more shaky, and it was shrinking, meaning it was coming to a close. The tornado was unmatchably strong, and just as people thought it was over, it was nowhere near. But at this point, everything that touched the tornado simply vanished. And even though this tornado was strong, that doesn't mean there wasn't positive takeaways. And may all the souls rest in peace that were claimed by this tornado. But that is where this is where it will finish up. The tornado finally began to end. It entered Midwest City, Oklahoma, then briefly crossed into Del City, where it would then vanish. And the damage that was seen was incredible. Homes simply just didn't exist anymore, no matter if it's large structures or not. The strength and pure devastation this tornado caused was unmatchably violent. And although it was violent, that doesn't mean there wasn't any positive takeaways from this event. The tornado caused millions, possibly billions of dollars in damage because of its pure location. Homes were shredded to pieces. Nothing existed, but that's not the real point. Arguably, to storm chasers, this was one of the strongest tornadoes they've ever heard of. But to the people of Moore and Bridge Creek, arguably, this was probably one of the most strongest tornadoes yet. And this is the strongest tornado in history. Have an amazing day.